people that know my channel know that I usually only put silly music in the back of some mediocre replays to show gameplay of my decks, but today I wanted to try something new, and why not start something odd with presenting an Odd Eyes Pendulum basic structure deck kind of deck profile gameplay video, then with making one right here. And this is mainly just to showcase what this deck does. It's just one replay that I found. It's not particularly interesting. It's just what you can do, what hand traps do to this deck, and what kind of stuff you will end on with like the basic kind of combos, nothing inside of like Electromite or anything else, just the basic kind of thing. If you want to check out the deck profile, it's also on my channel, fairly recent, so you should have no trouble finding that one. This is basically just triple the structure deck, Magicians of Pendulum, whatever it's called, and some normal or rare cards added to it. I think 5 in total, nothing specific, but that shall do the trick. But let's start into the replay, and we look at the starting hand. We have good cards like Sky Iris, we have good cards like Duelist Alliance. This deck is full of searchers, which is hard to remember sometimes which card can actually search which other card. Especially because this has 3 archetypes combined, which is Odd Eyes, Performer Pal, and Magicians. So here we have no Magician. With the Duelist Alliance, we could search the Pendulum Graph, the trap card, but it would do us no good because we have no Magicians to actually pop it. We could search the card that searches the Magicians, but if we do this, then we might be ashed here, and I'm not the biggest fan of this. But if you want to bait out Ash, I thought in this instance using Duelist Alliance first would possibly be the play, because I have a line that I can go into with Sky Iris if Sky Iris goes through, and it mainly will, unless I think your opponent has especially Ghost Ogre, which is hardly played in Master Duel. So I felt fairly fine if I use Duelist Alliance now. Then I can go into the whole Sky Iris line. The thing is, it didn't really matter in this kind of instance which card you play first, because you will have a line either way. If Sky Iris gets ashed, then you can still use Duelist Alliance to search Pendulum Call, and then just go into different kind of things and end in basically the same kind of board in the end. It will be mainly 2 disruptions that you aim for in this deck, which is either Persona Dragon, Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, or the Pendulum Graph. But since the Pendulum Graph here is kind of out of our reach, it would be Persona Dragon and the Vortex Dragon. So starting out, we actually put 1 Persona Dragon down to activate Duelist Alliance, because you have to have a card in your Pendulum Zone, which we do, and surprise, surprise, there's the Ash Blossom. We do not get the Surge. It's always something you have to keep in mind, because this is one of the hand traps with Maxi that is used the most in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel especially, and yeah, you mainly see it common. People usually only have it 3 times in the deck because that is the maximum amount, but they still seem to always have it, so keep in mind that you still have a play even if they ask you. So maybe play like this, bait it out. Most people will just whack it at you because they either don't know the deck or they just don't know the game. So yeah, you can bait it out quite easily against most opponents below Platinum or even below Diamond. So we couldn't go for Duelist Alliance, so we have to set up a different play, which is going for Performer Pal Pendulum Sorcerer, which we put in the scale, and we know if we get it into the extra deck, then we can summon it out if we get a scale 8, and that's where Sky Iris comes into play, activating Sky Iris, going for Sky Iris, activating the effect, popping the Pendulum Sorcerer, and adding our adorable scale 8 to our hand, which is all it does, especially in the specific variant. Not much more to say. It worked quite okay in Pendulum, in Performer Pals, the card itself, but here it's mainly there for the Odd Eyes name and also for the fact that it is scale 8. We will put the scale 8 down, and from this point onwards there's not much happening actually. We're just going to Pendulum Summon here, get the Performer Pal Pendulum Sorcerer out, and get our first, well, I want to say negate because it kind of is. It stops a lot of the link plays. Verta Anaconda comes to mind, Helka Fibrax, this whole combo line, it stops, and technically also stuff like Electromite. So in general, this card is better than it seems. Also works against a lot of these fusion decks. Albas, you might not take as much damage when it comes to the Masquerade Dragon. Other than that, the card isn't perfect, but for a cheap deck, this card does its job. And now we want to set up the second one. So what do? Is we activate Performer Pal Pendulum Sorcerer, pop itself, because we don't need it anymore, and we pop the other Persona Dragon, which leaves us in a bit of an annoying spot actually, because we search from this point onwards 1 Performer Pal Odd Eyes Dissolver, and what else we search is one Skullcrobat Joker. I keep forgetting the name. This card has been banned for like some time, then just came back, and now it's I think at 3, even in the TCG, not sure. But this card is a very great normal summon, and since we didn't normal summon yet, this card can add us another card to hand, which I think we will be using as a fusion material. The problem with Dissolver that I want to talk about now, probably already did in the deck profile, is this card would be amazing if it was level 7 and the 3 scale, or at least one of the two. In this deck you can Pendulum summon this card out, and also you cannot Pendulum summon cards from the extra deck that are level 4, which is quite annoying. So I decided to go for this play specifically because we also have Sky Iris in hand, so it's not on field, so it's not that important that this is a scale 4, because we could always pop it and search for a low scale if we ever have to go into stuff that is in our extra deck, summon it out. But since we probably might not have to, this is the play, because this sets up another one of our negates. First of all, we will obviously normal summon the Skullcrobat Joker for more shenanigans, and obviously we want more stuff in our hand, which would be Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon for this instance. And now what we do is we activate the effect Odd Eyes Dissolver, because we needed an Odd Eyes card in our hand, otherwise we couldn't fusion summon, because this card only on board can use your scales for fusion materials, not if it's actually put down the scales. Then it's basically just a fusion card for Odd Eyes monsters, if I'm not mistaken. So what we do is we fusion summon here using Skullcrobat Joker as the Pendulum monster, and the Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon as the, I think you need just an Odd Eyes monster, and that is our end board. 1 3000 defense point, well, Omni negate, and 1 extra deck monster negate, which in low platinum gold kind of thing, or everything below that, this is good enough to at least win you a lot of games. I'm not saying this is the best deck, crazy combo, mega good, wins every game kind of thing, but 2 disruptions can massively hurt a lot of decks. And with Pendulum decks, you kind of build up an advantage over time anyway with Pendulum summoning stuff back. Obviously, the Master Rule with the Links has hurt this deck in general quite a lot, because you can't spam out your whole extra deck the next turn, which it sounds silly, and it was. So it's probably fine that it's this way now, but it makes it a lot worse than it was. And now let's see what that does. I can already kind of spoiler it here. It will not do much. Opponent activates a Pot of Extravagance. At this point I was like, should I negate this? But the thing is, a lot of decks have kind of clear choke points in what they want to do. And if obviously I don't want my opponent to have multiple cards in hand, but they already only started with 5 cards in hand anyway, because they already used the Ash Blossom, which did nothing good, because we couldn't have set up any more than this anyway, really. So I thought getting them back to 6 cards won't be my demise. I'd rather keep my Omni negate till they use something that is worth negating, and then it possibly ends the whole turn, and we can use from that point onwards. And let's see what they do. They summon 1 Dragon Maid and activate the effect. I thought this is as good as time of any, because I don't want them to get the fusion. I don't want them to get more Dragon Maids on board. We will use the negate here to get rid of this. Their normal summon is out. Dragon Maids are somewhat reliant on their normal summon if they don't have specific cards in hand. And yeah, from that point onwards, the person basically surrenders, and that proves the whole point. They didn't have anything in hand that they could start the combo with. They maybe didn't want to play it out, possibly, especially against this variant. They could have had a chance, because it's quite hard to actually finish games like this. But you would have been able to pop Dissolver, add another scale to hand, summon something out from the extra deck, and yeah, it wouldn't have been amazing, but also you still had another draw, so possibly this was a high attacking monster, and then you could have possibly pushed for game if they didn't have any kind of spell traps, and even then you could have negated one of them, so there was not much to gain for them. We could have just done the same kind of routine every turn. From a lot of decks that works, that have clear choke points. It doesn't work for every deck, but let's be honest, a deck that would win every matchup sounds kind of broken and would be very boring to play anyway. So this is what you will deal with if you buy 3 times the structure deck, which is fine, 1,500 gems. For the fact that you cannot trade these cards or disenchant them or dismantle them, whatever it's called, it's fine. You have a playable deck. Like you see, this is the board you will mainly end. Sometimes Persona Dragon will be replaced by the Pendulum Graph. As you saw, we didn't special summon too much, so Max C isn't really a problem for this deck either. Stuff like Effect Veiler aren't really problems either. Infinite Permanence can be annoying because it's usable during your opponent's turn, so it gets rid of like Vortex Dragon's effect, which is one of your big playmakers, I'd say. Other than that, solid deck, doesn't do too much special, but is also kind of good to start learning how pendulums work, the pendulum mechanic, and it's easily upgradable, so I definitely say, why don't you give it a try?